The debate between synthetics and naturals is something that's been going on forever and probably will go on forever. So in this video, we're going to try to throw out as many pros and cons for naturals and synthetics as I can possibly come up with. We're going to show you side by side how they tie differently. Kick back and relax. This is a good one. The differences in natural and synthetic fibers are something that I would consider pretty obvious, but let's just kind of jump into this real quick. Natural fibers are going to include anything that comes off an animal. Yeah, that defines it pretty well. But marabou, deer hair, bucktail, any feathers, all these would be considered natural materials. Synthetic materials are probably more of a broad range. They cover things they're kind of supposed to be like the naturals, but then they have stuff that's completely all their own as well. The vast majority of our synthetics comes from the textile industry. So carpets, yarns, just material, stuff like that is where most of our synthetic material comes from. And by synthetics, I mean pretty much anything that is not a natural fiber, like craft fur, squimpish fibers, laser dub, all flash material. Some dubbing, a lot of dubbing now. Foam, pretty much anything that's man-made and obviously man-made. Every once in a while we see a synthetic product that hits the market that's meant to compete directly with a natural product, like bucktail and faux bucktail. It even says it in the name. So let's jump over to the vise, show you the difference in these two, and I'll let you make the decision. So we're going to kick this thing off with a regular bucktail and a faux bucktails. You can tell as I tie these in that the faux bucktail doesn't have as much flair as the regular bucktail. And as I add thread pressure on the regular bucktail, it flares even more. So faux bucktail doesn't have flair. Regular bucktail has flair. So now let's jump into the pros and cons side of things. I think this is probably the easiest way to kind of just give you as much information as I possibly can in as short a time as I possibly can. I know I tend to talk, but it's okay. I'm entertaining. So some of the pros for natural products, stuff like they're typically easier to tie with. They give you more movement. And this is a really, really fine line. There are so many synthetic materials that are super, super thin that do move really well, but you'll never, ever see anything that moves like marabou that's synthetic. Natural products soak up water more than synthetic products. So natural products will actually soak up the water, whereas synthetic products can get water trapped between fibers. It's not necessarily soaking up water, but it's grabbing water. Natural products will soak up water. They will bring it into their own fibers. And I don't consider that a bad thing. I really don't. There are times when you want that little bit of soaking up to help with a sink rate. I can't help but for my mind to go directly to like a sex dungeon head. You know, if you've ever fished a dungeon, they're so much better if you stick them in the water first and squeeze the head, try to get those fibers full of water, and then start fishing them. It's just they fish so much better right off the bat if you do that. So I don't consider soaking up water a bad thing unless it's a bad thing. Natural products also have a better taper to them. You cannot replace the taper on a natural product with anything. Something like Faux Bucktail tried to, because they have like a little bitty taper at the very end, but it's only at the very, very end. There's nothing on the synthetic side that is going to throw a natural taper like something that's natural. It just can't happen. So I guess it's easier to get a good taper on a bug or a streamer with natural materials than it is synthetic materials. So definitely a pro for the natural materials there. Natural materials just have life. I don't think I can explain that real well. Natural materials have this extra something to them that just breathes life into a fly. Like, I think CDC. You throw CDC on a fly, and immediately that fly has life. It's moving on its own. Marabou does the same thing. Just I can't put it into words. Natural materials just have life to them, and synthetic materials just kind of don't. Nothing in nature is just cookie cutter exact. Like, that's just not the way it works. One of the things on a natural versus synthetic is, I like to compare naiat and squimpish fibers. Synthetics can get close to a natural product. So let's jump over to the device and show you the naiat versus squimpish fibers, and kind of show you how close some synthetic products can get to a natural. So when you're talking the difference in naiat and squimpish fibers, this is a lot different than bucktail and faux bucktail. Naiat is not a hollow hair, so thread pressure doesn't necessarily mean as much flare as bucktail. So for those reasons, when you tie in squimpish fibers and naiat, you really don't see much of a difference at all when it comes to the finished product. So some of the cons for natural products. We tell you what's good about them, we got to tell you what's bad about them. The very first thing that comes to mind on the natural cons is typically you won't see as many colors in natural products as you can find in synthetic products. The dyeing process and stuff like that just isn't the same. Natural products are generally less durable than synthetic products. Think of Marabou, and you can just break it. It's super easy. But you're not going to take Flashabou and break it. Super easy. Another con is sometimes natural products can become pretty scarce. You'll hear big time tires talk about, there's just no Schlappen on the market right now. Or saddles are super hard to find. It's mostly on the feather side of things, but products can become scarce. And I said it as a pro, so I have to say it as a con as well. Natural fibers soak up water. So sometimes you don't want them to soak up water as much. Like I'm thinking dry flies and I don't know, big mice or something like that. You just don't want something to soak up water all the time. Generally, natural products require more work. With synthetics, everything is so cookie cutter that you can grab and go. With natural products, it's just a little bit more work involved. Sometimes you have to go through some stuff to find the right one. Whenever you're cutting bucktail, you have to clear out the under fur, deer hair as well. There's just a little bit more work involved to work with this material versus synthetics. And like I said, the durability difference is really a big difference. So let's jump over to the vise. I'm going to show you a new product from Fulling Mill that is stepping up to try to at least kind of compete with Peacock. This is pretty good stuff. When it comes to Fulling Mill's Peacock dubbing and natural Peacock, it really kind of depends on what you plan on using it for. The natural Peacock will always palmer well, but it's going to have a tendency to be a little bit more brittle and break, whereas the Peacock dubbing will actually get better looking the more it gets eaten. So big props to both products. So we went over the pros and cons for natural materials, so we're going to jump over to synthetic materials do some pros and cons. So some synthetic pros are, like right off the bat, the amount of colors. Like there are times when you'll see 30 plus different colors of a synthetic material. You won't find that on a natural material. You just won't. The consistency of synthetic materials is like very, very cookie cutter. You're going to be able to grab the same amount of a synthetic material side by side, and they're going to be really, really close, if not exactly the same. If it weren't for synthetic materials, flash would be basically a thing we'd never even thought of. Besides maybe peacock or, something like that. But like real bright flash, we wouldn't have it. Synthetics move well. They really do. They'll never move as good as the best moving natural materials, but synthetics move well. For me, synthetic dubbing is usually easier to get a good taper on a nymph or a dry fly or whatever than natural dubbing. It just works easier for me to get a good, beautiful, perfect taper. There's generally less work working with synthetic materials. You cut, you tie it in. You don't generally have to get rid of any crap or anything like that, except for like craft fur, stuff like that. But it's on the hide. Different story. But generally for synthetics, you grab and go and you tie it in. Good to go. Synthetics don't soak up water in the way we generally think of products soaking up water. The fibers themselves of synthetics aren't going to generally soak up water, but it will get water trapped in it. So one false cast and you get rid of so much of the water, whereas natural materials, you could false cast all day a big streamer and you're not going to get rid of all of it. It's super easy at all. And synthetics are so much stronger than natural materials in almost every way. My mind immediately jumps to quills and synthetic quills, like the difference in the two. So let's jump over to the vise and show you like how and why that strength and that synthetic ability in certain ways is way better than the natural. In my eyes. Totally in my eyes. With synthetic peacock quills versus just natural peacock quills, the first thing you're going to notice is that natural peacock is a lot more work involved. The synthetic quills have a sticky side, so when you wrap it, it sticks to itself. So if you drop it or anything, it's not going to unravel. Whereas the natural peacock, even when you put glue down, it usually unravels. This is probably the only product that's 100% win to the synthetic quills for me. The color's stronger, they're so much easier to use. This is a no-brainer. So now cons for synthetics. I feel like this is a short list, but don't let it make you think that I like synthetics more than naturals. That's not the case. It's just a totally open, exact conversation. So synthetics are slick. Like when you tie in Flashabou, like you're gonna be able to just pull it straight out from underneath a few turns of thread sometimes. So they're harder to work with. Like they wanna spin around the hook, and they're slick, harder to work with. So another con is something that I hadn't really thought about, and it can be worked around. It's not a big, huge thing, but natural materials have natural variegations to colors. Like, unless they've been completely bleached and dyed, if you see a natural product in its natural state, every fiber will be just a little bit different color than the next one. But different variegations in different materials helps it look more lifelike, like it's real. If you see variegations on a synthetic product, it's usually pretty harsh, like it's here's the beginning, here's the end, versus like a nice variegation through it. I'm not going to convey this in words very well, but one of the cons for synthetics is it's just a dead material. It just doesn't feel alive. It doesn't feel like it's got this extra something to it. I don't know. I can't explain it. For those of you that can use your words, go to the comments and tell me what I mean by they're not alive. because I know you know what I mean. I know that. And something else that I feel like you have to throw out there is environmental impact for synthetic products. Like, these things aren't going away for a long, long time. Whereas natural products will rot out, and if you leave a natural fly out in the weather for any period of time at all, you're going to start seeing it go bad. Natural products aren't going to do that. A lot of them are going to be there basically forever. So that's got to be a little bit of a con. Now, this video is no way meant to tell you exactly everything that can be replaced from a natural to a synthetic or a synthetic to a natural. It's just not. That would be a 7-year-long video. And I don't know, who knows, I may have to start a series on that. But this video, I hope, helped you figure out some different ways to do things, because this is one of my biggest pet peeves in fly tying. People get so sucked into the mentality that there's only one way to do things, and that's never the case. I've said it before, and I hope you've heard me, but if you haven't heard me say it, you're getting ready to. When someone tells you there's one way to tie something or one way to use a certain material, stop listening to that person. Stop. Because that mind frame would have left us in the 1700s with flies that were only made out of like squirrel tail and stuff like that. Thinking outside the box and using things in different ways and adding different things to different flies is the best way for us to innovate. And innovation means everything. I feel like there are definitely times when you're not going to be able to replace something. You're not going to replace marabou. You're not going to do it. So don't try. You're not going to replace bucktail, obviously. I kind of told you. I really think the best use for something like faux bucktail would be if you're a home plate umpire, wiping off the plate. I have no use for this stuff. You guys can yell at me all you want to. I have no use for it. Just none. I don't at all.